matched me with a great therapist that is helping me access the tools that I need. Even just small advice that she's given me, like one thing she told me was that I shouldn't check my phone in the morning until my morning routine is done. So I brush my teeth, take a shower, eat in the morning before I look at my notifications on my phone. And that's just a solid time to start my day where I'm not thinking about anything else. BetterHelp is custom online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you aren't comfortable with it. It's also more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in just under 48 hours, so it's quick, it's accessible. If you want to give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp online therapy, we have an offer for you. So this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and National Park After Dark listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/NPAD. That's BETTERHELP.com/NPAD. Hi everyone, welcome back to National Park After Dark. Happy holidays. We hope you had a great New Year's.
Yes, Happy New Year. It's 2022. We had a great 2021 because of this podcast.
Yeah, it really made a huge... How far we've grown since... Because we started, our first episode ever aired on January 25th, I think 2021. So we're almost a full year into this, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. And we wanted to say thank you so much. We have a lot of things planned for 2022 for the show. And we hope that everyone is as excited as we are to continue growing the show and exploring more stories.
Yeah, you know, we've really just been reflecting on our journey this past year with the podcast and the directions it's taken, and it's just so exciting to be here and to be a year later and to have all your support. So we just wanted to say a big thank you. We wouldn't have made it this far or made this many episodes.
Yes. And Cassie is taking us somewhere very near and dear to both of our hearts for this episode, and that's New Hampshire.
We're going to New Hampshire. I finally found a reason to come here. I'm really excited. We're going to a national forest, not a national park, but we do national forests sometimes, and there's just so much cool, interesting history in northern New Hampshire, and I also feel like New Hampshire is kind of forgotten about, you know?
I would say that's largely true, because out of all the places that I've been, traveled to, or lived in, a lot of people don't even know where it is on a map, or that it's even a state.
Yeah. Oh my god. It's so funny because I've literally had people be like, for example, I was in North Dakota a few months ago, and this guy, he asked me where I was from, and I said, oh, I'm from New Hampshire. He's like, oh yeah, that's somewhere down south, right?
So wrong.
No. And another time I had someone ask me where I was from, and I'm like, I'm from New Hampshire. They go, oh cool, what state is that in?
I've had that type of conversation so many times that if someone doesn't know where it is or whatever, and I just get the vibe from the person, I'll be like, I'm from Boston.
I was just going to say, do you say you're from Boston? Because it's so much easier. Everyone knows where Boston is, but I feel like New Hampshire is very largely forgotten about, and it's a really cool little corner of the country, so I think it's a fun idea to go there, and it's home.
Right. And I'm glad because I've been feeling a little homesick lately. So I am ready to be there mentally tonight.
I have too, actually. I mean, I know I'm just in Vermont, but I've been missing the White Mountains a lot recently. I haven't hiked there that much this year, which is a big contrast to last year. I was up in the White Mountains almost every week. I'm excited to go back there. I found some interesting stories. I found a lot of interesting facts about northern New Hampshire that I'm excited to talk about too.
Yes, so really quick, I guess, before we get going, Cassie and I were talking about this the other day. In regards to our last episode, which took place on Molokai, we had a discussion about the Native Hawaiian language and why it was banned, and kind of just asking for details from listeners if they had any inside information. And we had a listener that goes by AJ from Patreon who messaged us, and they gave us the lowdown. So essentially, I'm not going to read their whole message because it was quite long, even though we really appreciated that. But essentially, they lived in Hawaii for 17 years, I believe, and they told us a lot about how the language was banned, and how they enforced it was if they the government caught you either speaking it or even dancing hula or doing traditional native activities, then you would have a huge fine, like up to $10,000 type of fine, and you couldn't be speaking it or writing it or doing anything like that.
Also in the episode, I had asked if the language had been lost because of this, and they cleared that up a little bit, that people were secretly still speaking the language, and now today it's being brought back in studies around the island to try and bring the whole language back. So it's not a completely dead language. It's something that is still spoken and people are still trying to learn and keep the language alive, which I thought was really cool, because this kind of information, we can Google things all day, but when we hear from our listeners first-hand experience, that's the kind of stuff we like to hear about. So if you know stuff about a place that we're talking about because you live there or you have family from there or whatever, always let us know. We always love to learn about it.
Yeah, the doctor I work with, I spoke with her about it a little bit at work after the episode aired. She speaks Hawaiian so brilliantly, and she's from the island and has family that lives in the island. I just assumed that she had been born and raised knowing it, and so I asked her about it, and she said, no, I actually had the chance to, when I was in school, to either take Japanese, Spanish, or Hawaiian, and I chose Japanese. And she's like, which is, in hindsight, I don't know why I did that, and now I don't even really know much, but she learned the language later on in life. I just thought that was cool too, and she kind of corrected me a little bit on some of the words I mispronounced, and like, I don't know. I tried. It's like firsthand.
So hard.
Yeah, but she was cool.
Yeah, and I mean, if we do ever mispronounce anything, it's definitely, we're not trying to be disrespectful in any regard. Like, we're trying really hard to research these things and we practice pronouncing them, but sometimes some languages are a lot harder just because we don't speak them and we didn't grow up learning the alphabet that way, but we're trying really hard and we try to be as respectful as possible. And it's always nice to have someone who can correct you because they really know, and it's like, oh, thank you. Like, I want to know how to say it, I'm really trying, but it's always a learning curve.
Right, and here's the beautiful thing about today. We're from New Hampshire, okay, and we can speak how we want to speak and talk how we want to talk.
And we're going to pop the car and have a yacht, and
we're going to the mountains, and that's just how we speak in New Hampshire. So, I'm ready. I know that's a little bit of a Boston thing, but we're from southern New Hampshire. Boston accent and New England accent is kind of like that.
Ours isn't so strong, but yeah. Anyway, we're
Let's
going
go.
home, we're going to New Hampshire, we're going to New England. So the White Mountain National Forest is located in northern New Hampshire, and it covers 750,852 acres of land. It is in New Hampshire, but it also goes into Maine as well, and it's managed by the U.S. Forest Service. There's a lot of hiking here. People go skiing, cross-country skiing, biking. There's a lot of outdoor activities here. There's over 1,200 miles of hiking trails, and 100 miles of the Appalachian Trail are in the White Mountains. There are a ton of people who visit here every single year. There's actually 6 million people, to be exact, who visit every single year, which is wild. That means that it has more visitors than Shenandoah, Acadia, and New River Gorge combined.
Is a lot of that during leaf peeping season?
I don't know. That's a good question.
So leaf peeping for everybody is like the foliage, the fall foliage.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's got to be a huge time. I mean, obviously the summer because of all the activities, but I just feel like for the sheer number, I don't know. I just get that
I don't know, because summer in northern New Hampshire, you're sitting in traffic for a long time. In the summer, if you go on the weekend, because people are up there for the 4th of July, people do Saki, there's all the hiking everyone's doing. There's 48 peaks in the White Mountain National Forest, and they're over 4,000 feet. So it's why they said, like, oh, we're completing the 4,000 footers. So there's a lot of people who head there for that reason too. So I imagine that it's probably a combination between summer and fall, which are the main times.
Yeah, for sure.
It is a national forest. It was established in the year 1918, and it was established as a national forest because of something known as the Leaks Act, which was enacted in 1911. So basically, this act was a federal law that was passed by Congress that was later signed by the President William Howard Taft. And essentially what this law said was that the government had the right to purchase private property if it was for conservation efforts based on water sources. There was extreme logging in New Hampshire that was going on because people were industrializing, especially in the south. And because of all the trees that they were cutting down, there was a ton of erosion happening around the water sources that were then destroying buildings. And I was reading in Manchester, New Hampshire was a town, city that was really affected by it. So the government said, we really need to protect the logging and conserve and do what we need because we're ruining our towns and it's just going to extend further and further up north. So they decided to establish it as a national forest. The funny thing about this law too is that it was actually largely influenced by the big burn in Idaho that we talked about in the other episode.
About Ed Pulaski. Is that
Pulaski?
Pulaski.
Yeah, Ed Pulaski. So because of how many people died in the forest fires and the mismanagement of the U.S. Forest Service, they were trying to create a governing force that could manage national forests better.
Gotcha. I love when things tie in to other episodes. It's like we're building our knowledge base as we go on.
Yeah, it's like, remember back in this?
Right, like we can reference other episodes and other stories that we've learned about, and it's just like all building on one another, and it's fun to progress in our learning.
Yeah, and to see how everything's so linked, too.
Yeah.
This was established as a national forest, but a lot of people, because there's over 6 million people that visit every single year, have asked this question: why isn't the White Mountain National Forest a national park instead? And there's actually a couple reasons. The first one is that the government started buying land for the national forest in 1914, which was 2 years before the National Park Service was established. So they were kind of already in the works for this to become a national forest before the National Park Service existed.
Okay. So there were national parks before the actual service was formed.
Yeah, there were. And before the National Park Service was formed, they had people like the Department of War that would manage national parks and the Department of Agriculture.
Okay, the Department of Agriculture seems like a better fit if we had to choose than the Department of War. And as we have kind of talked about, the Buffalo Soldiers were obviously doing work in the national parks before
Some
the
of
actual
the first rangers.
Yeah, before the actual National Park Service was established, which I'm sure we will do a full episode on because it's so interesting and a kind of a lost part in history of the National Park Service as far as common knowledge goes. But I didn't know that the National Park Service was so kind of late in the game.
It seems like what happened was they're like, we need to preserve land. And they're like, okay, let's do it. And then they're like, wait, who's gonna run this? So they just kind of like gave it to people. And another reason of why the White Mountains are not a national park is because the White Mountain National Forest has a ton of ski resorts. There's like Loon and Attitash, and you don't see that. There's not a ski resort in the middle of Glacier.
Yeah, that's true.
And a big distinguishing factor between national parks and national forests are that national parks are created to preserve land and national forests are set aside for conservation uses of the land. But I just thought it was really interesting that people had brought that question up. But it does seem like a lot of times that it has been brought up, it's been squashed. It's like, nope, it's not becoming a national park. We're very happy with how the U.S. Forest Service is handling everything. We don't want to make it into a park.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and there is a lot of wildlife here, and they are protected as well in certain areas, and there's hunting regulations. There's bald eagles there's black bears, there's river otters, foxes, there's moose up in the White Mountains, which I personally have never seen up there, but they do exist.
That's funny because I haven't either. I've seen them
Really?
on my way to and from when I went to school in Keene.
Mm-hmm.
I would come home, obviously every once in a while, and the only moose in New England I've ever seen was on that drive.
I've never seen a moose in New Hampshire. My first moose I ever saw was when I moved to Jackson, Wyoming. First time.
It's just so weird. We actually, I think it was last winter or the winter before, so we live on a dead-end street, my family home, and it's literally right next to a big nature preserve. And so it's not out of the norm to hear coyotes at night, and there's a lot of wildlife activity. and I've never seen them, but
Mhm.
there's been moose tracks up and down my street and all of that. So I know they're around. It's just, I mean, people are always like, you want to see a moose? Like, go up to the King Dominguez Highway. I'm like, I've literally never seen them there. And I
It's
don't
like,
know.
I've been there many times, thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's funny. I've never seen one up there. It's just southern New Hampshire. I've seen them.
Yeah, that's so funny. They're around. They're around. And I know, like, I've never gone out for long periods of time. And you can even do tours, like, up in North Conway. I can literally book tours where they will take you where these moose are. So they are probably a better resource than we are since we haven't seen them. But anyway, we are going to be heading back to the year 1892, and we are going to be talking about a rescue mission that happened of two climbers who went up to Mount Washington to climb and had to be rescued. And Mount Washington, if you don't know that much about it, Mount Washington is the highest mountain in the Northeast. It's 6,200 and often has the worst weather in the entire world. I am here to tell you about the best solution for cracking and stretching your back, and that's the chirp wheel. 80% of Americans experience back pain at some point in their life. The health of your spine affects flexibility and mobility and affects your ability to complete everyday tasks. Whether you're an athlete, weekend warrior, or an active parent,